Hello everyone, and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the stories. The howl that woke me wasn't from any normal wolf. It crawled inside my head and made a home there, like it belonged to me somehow. My name is Eleanor Martinez. Ellie to the few who bother to be friendly, and I'm the first female ranger in Olympic National Park. It's the summer of 1968, and while the rest of America is talking about Vietnam and protests, I'm alone in these ancient forests with something I can't explain. It all started on a Tuesday. The sky was turning blood red as the sun dropped behind the mountains, painting the clouds in colors that would make any artist jealous. I was finishing my evening patrol, scanning the tree line for anything unusual. The mist was rolling in early, wrapping around the massive trees like ghost fingers. As I walked the path back to my truck, I noticed something strange. A group of deer stood perfectly still, watching me. Normally, they'd bolt at the first sight of humans. But these deer, they just stared, their eyes following me like they were waiting for something to happen. The quiet was broken by distant music floating through the trees. That new commune of hippies had set up camp in the northern part of the park, not officially allowed, but my boss, Chief Ranger Wilson, hadn't kicked them out yet. Free love and flowers are better than drunk hunters shooting at shadows, he'd said last week. Back at headquarters, Jane at the front desk handed me a piece of paper. Missing persons report, she said, without looking up from her magazine. 3 of those flower children haven't come back to their little love nest. I looked at the report. 3 names: Michael Farley, Susan Watts, and David Cooper, all in their 20s, last seen 3 days ago heading to Twilight Ridge for what they called a spiritual communion with nature. When I walked into the Rangers' break room with the report, the jokes started immediately. "Hey guys, Martinez got the hippie case," laughed Ranger Thompson, tipping back in his chair. "They probably just found some mushrooms and forgot who they were. Or they're dancing naked in a different part of the forest," Ranger Simmons added with a smirk. "Better bring your flower crown for the search, Eleanor." I ignored them and poured myself a cup of coffee. I was used to the jokes, the snide remarks. 6 months as the only woman in a team of 12 men had taught me to grow a thick skin. Chief Wilson walked in and the room went quiet. He was a big man with 30 years of ranger experience etched into the lines on his weathered face. "Martinez," he nodded at me, "I'm putting you on this missing persons case." "Yes, sir," I said, knowing exactly why. None of the men wanted to deal with the hippies. They thought it was beneath them. "Take it seriously," Wilson said, surprising me. "I've had a strange feeling lately. The park doesn't feel right." Later that evening, I interviewed the leader of the commune, a skinny man with long hair who called himself Moonlight. Despite his flowery talk about cosmic energy and Mother Earth, I saw real fear in his eyes when he talked about his missing friends. "They wouldn't just not come back," he insisted. "They promised to help prepare for the solstice celebration." "Any reason?" "They might have left without telling anyone," I asked. "No way," Moonlight shook his head. "And Susan left her journal behind. She writes in it every day. It's like her religion." Back in my cabin that night, I spread out a map of the area. Twilight Ridge had a dark history. Locals avoided. In old newspaper clippings in our archives mentioned disappearances dating back to the 1930s. Hunters, hikers, even a park ranger in 1942. I made notes until my eyes couldn't stay open anymore. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard it, that howl. Not quite wolf, not quite human. It echoed through the valley, structured like a call, but primal, in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. Something was out there in my forest, and somehow I knew it was connected to those missing hippies. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Morning came too quickly. I hadn't slept well, that strange howl playing over and over in my head. I pulled on my ranger uniform, the olive green fabric still stiff even after months of wear. I was pouring my first cup of coffee when a knock came at my cabin door. Outside stood Frederick Oakes, a local hunter who'd lived in these parts for 40 years. Ranger Martinez. He nodded, clutching something wrapped in an old towel. Found something you ought to see. He carefully unwrapped the towel to reveal a plaster cast of a footprint. My coffee nearly slipped from my hand. What made this? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The print was huge, over 12 inches long. It looked like a wolf track, but wrong. It showed a foot that had walked on 2 legs, not 4. The toes were too long, with strange claw marks extending from them. Found it by Sawyer Creek, Oak said quietly. Been hunting these woods my whole life. Never seen anything like it. I thanked him and promised to investigate. After he left, I sat staring at the cast, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. Later that morning, I drove to the Quileute Reservation. If anyone knew the secrets of these forests, it would be the people who lived here long before it became a national park. Thomas Penn was in his 70s, his face mapped with wrinkles that deepened when he smiled. His small wooden house smelled of cedar and tobacco. I've been expecting someone, he said when I showed him the cast. The signs have been there. Signs? I asked. The deer watching instead of running, birds going quiet at the wrong times. He traced the outline of the print with a weathered finger. My grandfather called them those who walk between forms. Not man, not wolf, but something in between. What exactly are they? I tried to keep my voice steady. Dangerous, he said. Simply, they come in cycles. Every few decades they hunt. They choose. Choose what? New members for their pack. I wanted to laugh it off as an old legend, but something in his eyes stopped me. He reached into a wooden box and pulled out a small leather pouch tied with sinew. If you go looking, take this, he said, placing it in my palm. Burn it if you feel your mind slipping away. The smoke will help you see clearly again. The pouch smelled of herbs and something sweet. Crystallized tree sap, Penn explained. I tucked it into my pocket, not believing in such things, but not willing to refuse his help either. That afternoon, I drove to the location Moonlight had given me. A narrow logging road led deep into the forest, ending at a small clearing where I found an abandoned VW van painted with peace signs and flowers. The doors hung open. Inside, sleeping bags and backpacks were still there, untouched. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing broken. It was like they had simply stepped out and vanished. I followed a faint trail leading from the van. After about a quarter mile, I found their campsite. My heart beat faster. The 3 sleeping bags were laid out around a cold fire pit, but they were shredded to pieces. Dark stains soaked the fabric. Blood, now dried to a rusty brown. Something violent had happened here. Strangest of all were the drag marks. They didn't lead in one direction, but 3 separate ways, as if each person had been pulled in a different direction. I radioed headquarters. This is Ranger Martinez. I found evidence of a possible attack at the missing persons campsite. Static answered me. I tried again with the same result. These mountains often blocked radio signals, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was completely alone out here. As I searched the area more carefully, something caught my eye. A Polaroid camera lay half hidden under a torn backpack. I picked it up, noticing it still had photos inside. I carefully pulled them out. The first view showed the 3 hippies smiling, making peace signs, hugging against the backdrop of the forest. Happy, normal vacation pictures. Then the photos changed. They became blurry, taken in a hurry. In the background of one, I could make out a tall shadow watching from between the trees. In the next, the shadow was closer, though still just a dark smudge. The last photo made my blood freeze. It was a close-up of what looked like a wolf's eye filling the frame. But in the reflection of that eye, perfectly captured, was a human face twisted in pure terror. I put the photos in my pocket with shaking hands. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, not even the wind in the trees. That's when I noticed the scratch marks on a nearby pine tree. Fresh marks, higher than a bear could reach. Something had stood here on two legs and left gouges in the bark that were deeper than any knife could make. As the sun started to sink, the forest suddenly felt different. Watching, waiting. I couldn't explain the feeling, but every instinct told me to leave before darkness fell. On the drive back to headquarters, I kept checking my mirror, unable to shake the feeling that something was following me, something that didn't want me to leave. That night in my cabin, I dreamed of running through the forest, not on two legs but on all fours, my body close to the ground, moving faster than any human could. I could smell everything, the moss, the decaying leaves, the small creatures hiding in their burrows. I woke with a start, my heart pounding. The sheets were kicked off, and my pajamas were damp with sweat. But that wasn't what scared me. There was mud on my hands and feet, caked under my fingernails, and my cabin door, which I always locked, was still locked from the inside. How had I gotten dirty? I hadn't been outside, unless... No, it was impossible. I refused to think about it. But as I washed the mud away in my bathroom sink, I couldn't ignore the howl that echoed through the valley outside. The same not quite human cry I'd heard the night before, only this time it sounded closer. The next morning, I went straight to headquarters to log the evidence I'd found. The Polaroid pictures would prove something strange was happening, even if I couldn't explain what. But when I opened my evidence bag, my stomach dropped. The photos were gone. I searched frantically through my pack, my pockets, my car. Nothing. Looking for something? Jane asked from her desk. The photos I collected yesterday, I said. They're missing. She frowned and flipped through the logbook. Says here you already turned them in last night. What? No, I didn't. Well, someone signed your name. She turned the book toward me. There it was, my signature, exactly how I write it. But I had no memory of coming to the station last night. Who received the evidence, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No one. The log shows you came in at 10:43 p.m. and signed out at 11:02 p.m. Jane shrugged. I wasn't here. A cold feeling spread through me. I had been asleep in my cabin at that time, or at least, I thought I had been. Chief Wilson's door opened, and he waved me in. Martinez, we need to talk about your investigation. I followed him into his office, not sure what to say about the missing evidence. I'm coming with you today, he said, surprising me. If there's something dangerous out there, I want to see it firsthand. I nodded, secretly relieved not to go alone. Wilson pulled out a large hunting rifle from behind his desk. Sir, that's against park regulations, I said. Wilson checked the chamber. Special circumstances. 3 people are missing, and that campsite you found had blood. This isn't a normal search and rescue anymore. An hour later, we were back at the hippies' campsite. Wilson moved differently than I'd ever seen before. He kept sniffing the air, his head tilting like he was listening for something I couldn't. Here, you smell that? He asked. I shook my head, like wet fur and something else. He dropped to all fours, examining the ground. The tracks are clearer than they should be. It's like my eyes are picking up details I never noticed before. I remembered Thomas Penn's warning about mines slipping away. The leather pouch felt heavy in my pocket. Wilson, maybe we should head back, I suggested. Get more rangers, do a proper search with a team. No, he said sharply. We're close. I can feel it. We followed one of the drag marks deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker, blocking out most of the sunlight. The air felt heavy, like before a storm. After an hour of hiking, Wilson stopped suddenly, his hand up. Listen, he whispered. At first, I heard nothing. Then a faint sound, breathing, ragged and uneven. Wilson moved forward and pointed to a fallen log. Inside the hollow trunk lay a man with long hair and a beard, one of our missing hippies. His clothes were torn, his body covered in scratches that looked self-inflicted, like he'd been clawing at his own skin. His eyes were open but empty, staring at nothing. "He's alive," I said, checking his pulse, "but he's not responding to anything." I pulled out my radio. "This is Ranger Martinez. We've found one of the missing persons. We need medical evacuation at..." Wilson was gone. One minute he was beside me, the next he had disappeared into the trees. "Wilson," I called, but not too loudly. Something told me making noise wasn't a good idea. I secured the injured hippie as best I could and marked the location on my map. Then I went looking for Wilson. The forest had grown darker, though my watch said it was only 2 p.m. It should have been bright daylight, but shadows stretched long between the trees. My compass didn't seem to work right. The needle spun in slow circles. After 20 minutes of searching, I realized I was lost. Every direction looked the same, and I had the strange feeling I was walking in circles despite trying to move in. A straight line, the air grew colder. Mist crept along the ground, twisting around my ankles like ghostly fingers. Then I heard Wilson's voice. "Martinez, over here." I followed the sound to a small clearing. What I saw there still haunts my dreams. Wilson stood in the center, but something was terribly wrong. His body was bent at angles that no human should bend. His uniform was torn at the shoulders and back, and his skin seemed to be stretching, like something inside was pushing to get out. "Wilson?" My voice came out as a whisper. He turned slowly. His eyes caught the dim light and reflected it back, like an animal's. A growl rumbled from his throat, a sound no human could make. "It wants me to bring you," he said, his voice deeper than normal, scratchy like he'd swallowed gravel. "It wants you to join the pack." "Who wants me?" I asked, taking a step back. "The Alpha, the first, the one who started it all." Wilson dropped to all fours, his spine making a cracking sound that made me wince. "Run, Martinez, run while you still can." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and sprinted back the way I'd come. Behind me, I heard fabric tearing and a howl that started human but ended as something else. Then came the sound of pursuit, not someone running on 2 legs, but a creature racing on 4, crashing through the underbrush with impossible speed. I ran harder than I'd ever run before. Wrenches whipped my face. Roots tried to trip me. My lungs burned and my legs screamed for rest, but the sounds behind me kept me moving. Up ahead, I spotted the old fire lookout tower. It was our only manned tower left, standing tall above the trees. If I could reach it, I might have a chance. I burst through the trees and sprinted across the clearing to the tower. The metal stairs clanged under my boots as I rushed upward, not daring to look back. Inside the lookout, I slammed the trapdoor shut and slid the heavy bolt into place. Then I collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. Outside, something circled the base of the tower. I could hear it sniffing, growling. Then came a sound that froze the blood in my veins. Wilson's voice, but wrong. "Let me in, Martinez. It's easier if you don't fight it." I crawled to the window and peered out. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky in dark reds and purples. Below, a shape moved around the tower, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on 4. In the growing darkness, I couldn't see clearly, but what I did see wasn't Wilson anymore. More howls answered from deeper in the forest, wolf-like but not quite right. The creatures were calling to each other, and they were getting closer. I was trapped in the tower with night falling fast. Whatever Wilson had become was waiting below, and its friends were coming. The leather pouch Thomas Penn had given me felt warm in my pocket, like it knew it was needed. My hands shook as I opened it. This wasn't something they'd taught us in Ranger training. Inside the pouch were dried leaves, roots, and chunks of amber-colored tree sap. I emptied them into the metal ashtray on the lookout desk. The howls outside grew louder. Through the windows I could see shapes moving in the darkness, some on all fours, others walking upright. Their eyes caught what little moonlight filtered through the clouds, glowing like small yellow lamps. My hands shook as I struck a match and touched it to the contents of the pouch. The herbs caught fire, sending up a sweet-smelling smoke that filled the small tower room. It made my eyes water, but cleared my head in a strange way, like waking from a dream I didn't know I was having. The smoke seemed to bend the air, creating wavy patterns that distorted my view of the forest below. But instead of making things harder to see, I could suddenly see more clearly. What I saw made me wish I couldn't. Gathered around the base of the tower were creatures that shouldn't exist. They had the general shape of wolves, but stood on two legs. Their front limbs were longer than normal, ending in hands with fingers tipped with claws. Their heads were wolf-like, but with eyes that looked too intelligent, too aware, and among them, still not fully changed, was Wilson. Parts of his ranger uniform still clung to his body, which bent awkwardly between human and animal. When he lifted his face toward the tower, I could still see traces of the man I knew, trapped in a face that was becoming something else. The creatures reacted to the smoke. They backed away from the tower, snarling and pawing at their snouts. Some made sounds that weren't animal at all. Broken words, pleas for help, cries that sounded human. I grabbed the binoculars from the desk and looked closer. What I saw still doesn't make sense, but I know what I saw. As the smoke drifted down, the creatures' forms seemed to shimmer, and for brief moments, I could see human faces superimposed over the wolf heads, faces frozen in expressions of terror or pain. Then something strange happened. Images flashed in my mind, memories that weren't mine. A hunter from the 1950s, tracking deer when something attacked him from behind. A hiker from the 1970s, camping alone when eyes appeared in the darkness. A logger from the 1930s, separated from his crew when a storm hit. All of them ended the same way: teeth, pain, transformation. Eleanor. Wilson's voice came from below, clearer than before. I looked down to see him clinging to the bottom of the ladder, fighting against his changing body to hold on. His face kept shifting between human and animal, but for a moment, his eyes were his own again. "They're still in here," he gasped. "All of them trapped." "Who?" I called down. "Everyone they've taken. Our minds stay human, but the bodies change. The Alpha controls us." His body convulsed, and he nearly fell from the ladder. When he looked up again, his eyes had changed back to animal yellow. "Shoot me," he begged, his voice breaking into a growl. "Before I'm gone completely." I pulled my service revolver from its holster, tears blurring my vision. "Wait," Wilson struggled to speak. "Listen first. The Alpha must die. It's the oldest one, the biggest. It holds all our original minds captive. If it dies..." Another convulsion took him. His fingers, now more like claws, gripped the metal ladder so hard they left dents. "I'm sorry, Eleanor," he said. Then, in a final act of humanity, he used his own claws to tear at his throat. Blood sprayed the ladder as his body fell to the ground below. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This wasn't happening, couldn't be happening, but the howls from the forest told me it was real. The creatures circled the tower once more, then melted away into the darkness, leaving Wilson's body behind. I stayed in the tower all night, keeping the herb mixture burning and my gun ready. As dawn approached, I could see no sign of the creatures. Maybe they only hunted at night. The morning light revealed Wilson's body below, but it had changed back to mostly human. If someone found him, they'd see a man with his throat torn out. A wildlife attack, they'd say. A tragic accident. But I knew better. I climbed down from the tower, my legs still shaking. I had to find the Alpha Wilson had mentioned. Had to end this before more people were taken. In my pocket were the remaining herbs from Penn's pouch. I had an idea. I carefully opened the bullets in my revolver and mixed tiny amounts of the herbs with the gunpowder, then resealed them. I didn't know if it would work, but it was all I had. Using my compass, which worked normally in the daylight, I headed in the direction the creatures had gone. After an hour's hike, I came across something I hadn't noticed before. A rock wall with faded paintings, ancient pictographs showing human figures kneeling before half-wolf, half-human shapes. The Quiluta had known about these things for centuries. Beyond the rock wall, I found a path that led to a grove of massive trees, older than any others in the forest. The ground in the center was bare dirt, packed down as if many feet had walked there over time, and hanging from the trees were small tokens, watches, jewelry, eyeglasses, belongings from people taken over the years, decades maybe, even centuries. I hid behind a fallen log at the edge of the clearing and waited. The sun climbed high overhead, then began to sink again. My back ached and my stomach growled, but I didn't move. As twilight approached, I heard them coming, the soft pad of paws on dirt, the occasional snort or growl. The pack returned to their gathering place. They brought the other two missing hippies with them, dragging them into the center of the clearing. The young man and woman were alive, but looked drugged or hypnotized. They didn't fight or scream, just stared with empty eyes. I watched in horror as the transformation began. Their limbs started to stretch, bones cracking audibly as they reshaped. Their faces contorted in pain, but they made no sound, as if they couldn't control their own voices. Then came the Alpha. It walked into the clearing on two legs, head and shoulders above the others. Unlike them, it seemed perfectly comfortable, in its form, moving with a terrible grace. Its fur was grayer than the others, with a streak of silver down its back. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move, but I heard the words in my head clear as day. New pack members, it said, circling the changing hippies. Young, strong, good choices. The other creatures bowed their heads as it passed, like subjects before a king. The Alpha stopped suddenly and lifted its nose to the air. There's another. Human here, it said. I can smell her fear. I gripped my gun tighter, not daring to breathe. Come out, the voice commanded in my head. Join us willingly. It hurts less that way. To my horror, my body started to move on its own, like I was a puppet on strings. I fought against it, my mind screaming no while my legs tried to stand. The herbs. I remembered Penn's words about minds slipping away. I jammed my hand into my pocket, grabbed the last pinch of the mixture and shoved it into my mouth, biting. Down hard. The bitter taste flooded my tongue, but the pull on my body stopped. I stayed hidden, now able to fight the creature's control. Interesting, the voice said. She resists. I like the strong ones. I had to act now before it found me. I took a deep breath, stood up, and stepped into the clearing, my gun aimed at the Alpha. All the creatures turned to look at me. The Alpha's yellow eyes narrowed. The female ranger, it said, sounding almost pleased. I've been watching you. The Alpha circled me slowly, its yellow eyes never blinking. I kept my gun aimed at its chest, but my hand was shaking. Lower your weapon, it said inside my head. We don't need to be enemies. You killed Wilson, I said out loud, my voice sounding small in the clearing. You've been taking people for years. The Alpha made a sound, almost like laughter. Killed? No, improved. Wilson is still here, just changed. As for the others, they chose this. Liar, I spat. No one would choose to become a monster. The creature stopped pacing and stood up straighter, towering over me. Monster, is that what you see? Look closer, little ranger. Its form shimmered, and for a brief moment, I saw a man's face superimposed over the wolf features, bearded, with eyes that had seen many years. Then it was gone, back to the wolf-like face. I was like you once, the voice continued in my head. A trapper in 1889. I hunted these mountains until I found something that hunted me back. The original pack, the first dogmen. What happened to them, I asked, trying to keep it talking while I looked for a clean shot. I killed their Alpha, took its place. Pride filled the creature's voice. When you kill an Alpha, you can choose. Take. It's power or end the pack. I chose power, immortality, strength beyond any human limits. Around us, the other creatures had formed a circle, watching. The two hippies were still changing, their screams now audible as their bodies twisted into new shapes. "Let them go," I demanded, nodding toward the hippies. "Too late for that," the Alpha said. "The change has started, but you—" It took a step closer. "You could join us willingly, become my new second in command. Wilson wasn't strong enough, but you have potential." It raised a clawed hand toward me. "The pack is a gift. We're faster, stronger, live longer. We see and hear and smell things humans can only dream of, and we hunt together as family." For a moment, just a moment, I felt tempted. The memories I'd seen flashed through my mind again, but this time I felt the power in them, the rush of running through the forest on all fours. The perfect unity of the pack mind. Then I remembered Wilson's eyes as he begged me to kill him. The terror in the hippie's face reflected in that Polaroid photo. "No," I said firmly. The Alpha sighed in my mind. "Then we do this the hard way." It nodded to the other creatures. "Take her." They rushed forward all at once. I fired my gun at the closest one, hitting it in the shoulder. Where the bullet struck, its fur sizzled and smoked. The herbs were working. The creature howled in pain and backed away, but there were too many others. I kept firing, each shot finding a target, but I only had 6 bullets. After the 6th shot, they were on me. Clawed hands grabbed my arms, my legs, my shoulders. I fought wildly, kicking and punching, but they were too strong. The Alpha approached as they held me down. "The pack always grows," it said, "one way or another." It opened, its jaws revealing teeth made for tearing flesh. I struggled harder but couldn't break free. Then a sound cut through the clearing, the whomp, whomp, whomp of helicopter blades. Everyone froze, looking up. A Forest Service helicopter appeared overhead, searchlight cutting through the trees. They were looking for Wilson and me, I realized. We'd been gone too long, the Alpha growled, a sound of pure rage. "Drive them away," it commanded the pack. The creatures released me and howled as one, the sound so loud it made the ground vibrate. They scattered into the trees, moving to attack. The helicopter. It was my only chance. I grabbed my empty gun from the ground. No bullets left, but the Alpha didn't know that. I pointed it straight at the creature's head. "Don't move." The Alpha turned back to me, teeth bared. "You're out of bullets, Ranger." "Want to bet your life on that?" I bluffed. It hesitated, and in that moment of doubt, I remembered the flare gun in my belt, standard equipment for every Ranger on patrol. I dropped my revolver and pulled out the flare gun in one quick motion. The Alpha lunged forward, just as I fired. The flare hit it directly in the chest, igniting its fur instantly. The herbs I'd been chewing must still have been on my hands when I loaded the flare, because the fire spread unnaturally fast, engulfing the creature in blue-green flames. Its scream was like nothing I'd ever heard, part animal howl, part human cry of agony. The sound echoed through the forest as the Alpha thrashed and clawed at the flames, but nothing could put them out. Around the clearing, the other creatures dropped to the ground, their bodies convulsing. The 2 half-transformed hippies collapsed. As well, their partially changed bodies trying to revert to human form. The Alpha fell to its knees before me, its body consumed by fire. In its eyes I saw something change, a look of relief breaking through the pain. "Thank—" It gasped in a human voice, then it collapsed into ashes. One by one, the other creatures stopped moving. They didn't turn back to human. They were too far gone. Instead, their bodies seemed to age rapidly, fur turning gray, then white, skin wrinkling and shrinking against bone, until they were just empty husks. Only the 2 hippies remained alive, their bodies slowly returning to human form. Though they'd never be the same again, broken bones and stretched skin would leave them scarred forever. The helicopter landed in the clearing. The Rangers who jumped out found a scene they could never understand. 2 injured hippies, the withered remains of creatures they'd never seen before, and me, standing in the center of it all with an empty flare gun. The official report called it a mass wildlife attack. No one believed my story about wolfmen and mind control. The forest rangers found Wilson's body by the tower and listed his death as an animal attack. The third hippie, the one we'd found in the log, remained in a mental hospital, unable to speak except to howl at the full moon. I quit the park service a month later, moved to Arizona, where the deserts were wide open and I could see anything coming from miles away. No forests, no shadows, no hiding places for things that shouldn't exist. But some nights, when I'm drifting off to sleep, I still feel the pull, the urge to run on all fours under the moon. I still dream of the pack mind, the connection to others that was offered to me. I wake from those dreams with my heart racing, relieved to find myself still human, still me. 10 years passed. I built a new life, tried to forget. Then one day a package arrived at my small desert home. Inside was a newspaper clipping from Washington State, unidentified animal photographed in Olympic National Park, the headline read. The blurry image showed a female figure with wolf-like features watching a campsite from the trees. Below the picture was a handwritten note. When rangers investigated, they found your old badge number scratched into a tree nearby. I burned the clipping and packed my bags that night. I've been moving ever since, never staying too long in one place, always watching the shadows, always listening for howls at dusk, because I know what no one else will believe. The alpha I killed wasn't the first, and somewhere in those ancient forests, a new pack is forming, waiting, watching, growing, and someday they'll come looking for me. The knocking sound came again. 3 sharp taps, then silence, like someone was hitting wood against wood, trying to get my attention. I froze, my breath making little clouds in the cold Minnesota morning. That sound didn't belong here. My name is William Nakamura, just call me Bill. I've been a forest ranger for 15 years, and for the past 3 months, I've been hiding out here in Pinewood Forest. Hiding from memories, hiding from people, hiding from myself. The early morning fog wrapped around the ancient pine trees like ghostly fingers as I pressed the metal tag into the bark. I was marking trees for the beetle inspection team. Simple work, safe work, the kind where no one dies on your watch. The knocking sound echoed through the trees again. This time I spun around quickly, trying to catch whatever was making it. Nothing. The sound stopped the exact moment I turned. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the massive trees. "Anyone there?" Only silence answered back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. 6 months ago, I lost 3 hikers in the Rockies. A rescue mission gone wrong. Their families cried at the funeral. The youngest was only 19. After that, I couldn't face mountains anymore, so I transferred to this quiet forest outpost in northern Minnesota, a place where the biggest excitement was supposed to be angry campers with broken tents. I shook my head and returned to marking trees, just my imagination playing tricks. Too many nights alone in my cabin, with nothing but old rescue reports and whiskey for company. By lunchtime, I'd finished the north section and headed back to the ranger station. Kevin 2 Rivers, the local Ojibwe ranger aide, was making coffee. When I walked in, "You look like you've seen a ghost," Kevin said, sliding a mug across the desk to me. I took the coffee and shrugged. Heard some weird knocking out by the old growth section, probably just woodpeckers. Kevin's hand froze for just a second as he was reaching for sugar. It was quick, but I caught it. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. "Just, my grandfather used to warn us kids about the old growth area, said shadow people live there. They watch, but they're rarely seen." I laughed, but it came out forced. "Shadow people, come on. Just stories," Kevin said, adding sugar to his coffee. "Things old people tell kids to keep them from wandering too far." I nodded, but something about the way he said it made the hair on my arms stand up. The next morning, something was wrong with my survey markers. Every single one I'd placed yesterday had been moved, not just knocked over. carefully removed and replanted in a perfect geometric pattern, the kind that would take surveying equipment to make so precise. I knelt down and examined the closest marker. The soil around it was packed down firmly, like it had been in place for weeks, not hours. "What the hell?" I muttered. Later that day, I ran into a university research team studying owl populations in the forest. They were packing up their equipment, looking frustrated. "Heading out early?" I asked the lead researcher, a woman with thick glasses and a permanent frown. "Equipment keeps failing," she said, "and someone's been tampering with our memory cards. Plus, we're getting strange infrasound readings that make no scientific sense." Infrasound. Sound waves below human hearing range, she explained, usually caused by earthquakes or large animals. But these patterns are unusual, almost structured, like a language. I thought about the knocking sounds and felt a chill run down my spine. That afternoon on patrol, I found something that made me question everything I knew about this forest. 15 feet up in the trees were elaborate structures made of twisted branches. They were woven together too perfectly to be random, forming what looked like platforms or nests. But they were way too high for humans to build without ladders or climbing gear, and the way the branches were bent and twisted, it would take incredible strength, but also precision, like they were made by something with hands, something with thumbs. That night, my dreams were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I was running through ancient forests, but everything looked different. Instead of colors, I was seeing heat, blue, cold tree trunks, the warm, red glow of small animals hiding in the underbrush. I was moving faster than humanly possible, leaping over fallen logs with ease. I woke up gasping, my heart racing. The cabin was dark and quiet, but something felt off. I reached for the flashlight beside my bed and clicked it on. That's when I saw them. Muddy footprints on my cabin floor. They weren't human. Each print was over 20 inches long, with a strange flexibility in the middle that human feet don't have. They walked across my floor and stopped right at the foot of my bed. I sat up quickly, shining the light at every corner of the cabin. Nothing, and my doors were still locked from the inside. How had they gotten in? And more importantly, what had made them? The forest was changing around me, or maybe I was finally seeing what had always been there. Birds would suddenly go silent as I walked, the silence spreading like a wave through the trees. Sometimes I'd turn quickly and catch glimpses of movement, too big to be a deer, too silent to be a bear. Something was watching me, something that didn't want to be seen, and I was starting to think the stories about shadow people might not be just stories after all. The next morning, I found Kevin waiting at my cabin door, his face tight with worry. In his hands was an old leather book, the pages yellow with age. "My grandfather's journal," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I think you should read it." We sat at my small kitchen table as he opened the book to pages marked with a faded red ribbon. "My grandfather wrote this in 1937, Kevin explained. "He was a ranger here too." I leaned forward to read the shaky handwriting. "Third encounter with the tall mothers today. They took the offerings I left. They speak without words, pressing thoughts into my mind like fingers pressing into clay. They say they were here before us, that they will remain after we are gone. They are the guardians of the old places." I looked up at Kevin. "Tall mothers?" He nodded slowly. "That's what my people called them. Ancient beings who protect the forest. Some call them Sasquatch or Bigfoot. My grandfather believed they were as real as you and me." I thought about the footprints on my floor, the structures high in the trees. "There's more," Kevin said. "Hikers have been reporting strange things. They feel watched. Some hear whispers in a language that sounds older than any they know. A few have gotten lost in areas they know well, showing up hours later with no memory of where they've been." My mouth felt dry. "You believe these stories?" Kevin stared out the window at the ancient pines. I didn't. Not really. Until yesterday. He rolled up his sleeve to show me a perfect handprint bruised into his forearm, a handprint far too large to be human. Something grabbed me when I was collecting water samples by the North Creek. I didn't see it, just felt fingers close around my arm and then pictures in my head, like someone was putting photographs directly into my brain. What kind of pictures, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A circle of dead trees, a single sapling in the middle, and feelings, urgency, fear, loss. Kevin's eyes met mine. They need help, Bill. That afternoon, I found something that chilled me to the bone. A deer carcass, but not like any animal kill I'd ever seen. The deer had been taken apart with what looked like surgical precision. Organs removed, no blood spilled, no sign of teeth or claws. The work was too clean, too careful. When I returned to my cabin that evening, small things were out of place. My compass, maps, and the photo of my parents, all arranged to point toward the oldest part of the forest. I hadn't left them that way. Something was trying to tell me something. The next day, I felt different in the forest. I suddenly knew things I shouldn't know, where underground springs ran beneath my feet, the location of hidden caves, even how old certain trees were. Knowledge that wasn't mine, somehow flowing into my mind. The stories say they can reach into minds, Kevin told me when I described the feeling. The legends go back thousands of years to when the great ice sheets melted and uncovered this land. Together, we went to investigate strange markings I'd found carved into tree trunks. They looked like no language I'd seen before. Swirling, symbols that seemed to change the longer you looked at them. That's when it happened. One moment I was standing next to Kevin, examining the carvings. The next, my nose was bleeding and the sun was in a completely different position in the sky. "Kevin," I called out, disoriented. No answer. According to my watch, 4 hours had passed. 4 hours I couldn't remember. I stumbled through the forest, calling Kevin's name. That's when I found it, exactly what Kevin had described seeing in the visions. A perfect circle of dead trees, every single one grey and lifeless, without any sign of disease or fire. And at the center, a single sapling of a type I'd never seen before. Kevin was nowhere to be found. I ran back to the station and called for search parties. Rangers from 3 counties came to help look. For 2 days, we found nothing. On the 3rd day, one of the search teams radioed in. "We found him," the voice crackled over the radio. He's sitting in a tree." I raced to the location they gave me. There was Kevin, 30 feet up, wedged in the fork of an ancient pine. His eyes were open but blank, staring up at the canopy. He didn't respond when we called his name. He didn't move when we shook the tree. It took 4 rangers to bring him down, and still he didn't speak or acknowledge us. The paramedics rushed him to the county hospital. That night, the forest fell silent. Not just quiet, completely silent. No owls hooting, no wind in the branches, no small animals rustling in the underbrush, like the entire forest was holding its breath. 3 days later, Kevin died in the hospital. The doctors were baffled. His brain had hemorrhaged in multiple places, but there was no trauma, no injury to explain it. Before he died, he had brief moments of consciousness where he spoke in languages no one recognized. Languages the experts later said included extinct Native American dialects Kevin couldn't possibly have known. His last words, spoken clearly in English, were, "The children are dying. They need help." That night my dreams changed. I was no longer running through the forest. Instead, I stood in a clearing, facing a tall female figure whose face remained in shadow. She seemed to be waiting for me to speak, but I had no words. When I woke, I wasn't alone in my cabin. I could feel a presence, something massive and ancient watching me from the darkest corner of the room. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. "What do you want from me?" I whispered into the darkness. "No," answer came in words. Instead, images flooded my mind. Young creatures similar to the shadowy figure but smaller, writhing in pain. A contaminated stream. Plants that could heal them. When the visions cleared, I looked down at my hands. In them was a notepad covered in detailed botanical drawings, plants I'd never seen before. The handwriting was mine, but I had no memory of drawing them. Something was using me, using my hands, using my mind, and it needed my help. I couldn't stop staring at the botanical drawings in my hands. They were so detailed. The exact curve of each leaf, the pattern of veins, even tiny hairs on the stems, and I had drawn them in my sleep. I took the drawings to the university the next day. The botanist's eyes went wide when she saw them. "Where did you find these?" she asked, touching the paper carefully. "I drew them," I said. I didn't tell her I had done it while something else controlled my hands. She shook her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. 3 of these plants are extinct. We only know them from fossils. And this one..." She pointed to a small flower with star-shaped petals. "This one might still exist, but it's incredibly rare. We have samples in our collection. I need to see it," I said. "It's important." Back at my cabin that night, a storm rolled in. Rain lashed against the windows and thunder shook the walls. Lightning flashed, and in that brief moment of brightness, I saw footprints on my porch, massive footprints leading right to my door. I grabbed my flashlight and went outside. The rain had already started to wash away the prints, but they were unmistakable. The same oversized footprints I'd found inside my cabin before. Only this time, there was something else. At eye level on my door were 4 deep marks, like something had dragged its claws or fingers down the wood. Something had been right outside my door. Something big. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadowy figure from my dreams. I felt her calling to me, pulling me toward the old-growth forest. At dawn, I gave in. I packed my backpack with water, food, and first aid supplies, then headed to the circle of dead trees where we had found Kevin. Standing in the center, next to the strange sapling, I felt foolish. What was I doing here? Chasing shadows and dreams. Kevin was dead. Maybe I was losing my mind too. Still, I had come this far. "I'm here," I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast silence. "I want to help. I don't know how, but I'm willing to try." Nothing happened at first. Then, slowly, I felt a pressure inside my head. Not painful, but strange, like gentle fingers sorting through my thoughts and memories. I dropped to my knees, not fighting it, but not fully understanding either. Images flashed through my mind, a hidden valley, a community of creatures living in the trees, young ones sick and dying. Then came knowledge. A chemical spill from an old mining operation had poisoned the watershed, affecting their food supply. When the pressure eased, I stumbled back to my cabin in a daze. That night, I had the most vivid dream yet. The shadowy figure finally showed herself clearly. She was enormous, at least 9 feet tall, with a body covered in reddish-brown hair. Her face was a blend of ape and human features, but her eyes were deeply intelligent, filled with wisdom and sorrow. "You can see me now," she said, though her mouth didn't move. The words appeared directly in my mind. "Who are you?" I asked. "We have many names," she replied. "Your kind has called us Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti. We were here long before humans walked these forests. For 50,000 years, we have watched your kind grow and spread. Why haven't we found evidence of you? Bones, remains?" A feeling like sad laughter touched my mind. "We take care of our dead, and we have ways of making humans forget what they see. When your kind comes too close, we can cloud your thoughts, create confusion. Few humans remember their encounters. With us, clearly." Kevin remembered, I said. Sadness flowed from her. "Yes, some minds are more compatible with ours. Kevin's grandfather was such a mind, and so are you." "What do you want from me?" "Our young are dying," she said. A poison from your world has entered our food chain. It attacks their nervous systems. We have medicines, ancient knowledge, but this poison is something new, something we don't understand. The plants in my drawings, I realized. They're medicine. Yes, but not enough. We need human medical knowledge to save our children. I woke with a start, my body covered in sweat. On the table beside my bed was a detailed map, drawn in my handwriting but showing places I'd never been. It marked the location of the Sasquatch, clan's territory, and the contamination source, an abandoned copper mine that had leached chemicals into the groundwater. I needed help, real medical help. But who would believe me? I remembered something the university botanist had mentioned. A colleague who specialized in primate neurology, Dr. Eleanor Hayes. Maybe she could help, even if I couldn't tell her exactly what she would be treating. That evening, I was heating up canned soup when I felt a presence outside. I opened my door slowly. She was standing at the edge of the forest, her massive silhouette clear in the moonlight. The Sasquatch matriarch. In person, not in dreams. 9 feet of power and ancient wisdom, both terrifying and somehow vulnerable. We stared at each other across the clearing. No words passed between us, but her message came through clearly in fragmented images. 5 young clan members already dead, 7 more showing symptoms, time running out. I closed my eyes and thought, as clearly as I could, I'll find help. I know someone who might be able to create a treatment. When I opened my eyes, she was gone. But a single tuft of reddish-brown hair hung from a branch near where she had stood. Proof. Real physical proof that I wasn't going crazy. The next day, I drove to the university to find Dr. Hayes. I planned to convince her to come look at some unknown primate species I discovered in the forest, a half-truth at best. But when I arrived at her office, she wasn't there. Her assistant said she had called in sick, something very unusual for her. That night my phone rang at 2 a.m. It was the county sheriff. Nakamura. We've got a situation. Dr. Eleanor Hayes has been reported missing from her home. Signs of forced entry, and he paused. 2 of my deputies responded to her security alarm. They're dead. Something tore through them. My blood ran cold. The matriarch had taken matters into her own hands. I'm coming in, I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. But I didn't go to the sheriff's office. Instead, I packed my gear and headed straight for the location marked on the map. The hidden valley deep in the forest where no human was meant to go. As I hiked through the night, I felt the forest changing around me. Plants grew in ways they shouldn't, vines forming perfect spirals, trees bending to create archways. Rock formations appeared arranged, like trail markers, guiding me deeper into uncharted territory. The Sasquatch were leading me in, and I was following, even though I knew I might never come back out. Dawn broke as I reached the edge of a valley I never knew existed, despite months of patrolling these woods. Mist hung between the ancient trees, and the morning light filtered through in golden beams. I stopped, mouth open in wonder. Above me, at least 30 feet up, the forest canopy had been woven into living shelters. Branches bent and twisted together to form platforms, walkways, and dome-shaped homes. It was like an entire village built into the trees themselves. Movement caught my eye, large shapes moving with surprising grace through the upper branches. I counted at least a dozen Sasquatch of different sizes. Some were clearly youngsters, smaller and more playful in their movements. Others were massive adults, watching me with cautious eyes. "Hello," I called up, feeling stupid the moment the word left my mouth. A familiar pressure touched my mind, the matriarch communicating without words. Follow, now. Urgency. I moved deeper into the valley, guided by gentle mental nudges. The forest floor, showed signs of careful tending, medicinal plants growing in arranged patterns, stones placed to direct water flow, paths worn by massive feet. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a home, a civilization hidden right alongside ours for thousands of years. The mental nudging led me to a cave entrance partially hidden by hanging vines. Inside, the air was surprisingly warm and smelled of herbs and earth. Light filtered in through cleverly positioned openings in the rock ceiling. "Hello? Is anyone there?" A woman's voice called from deeper inside, frightened but trying to sound brave. "Dr. Hayes," I called back, moving carefully through the cave. I found her in a side chamber, kneeling beside what at first glance looked like a pile of reddish-brown fur. As I came closer, I realized it was a young Sasquatch, maybe the equivalent of a human, 8-year-old. The creature's limbs twitched with uncontrolled spasms, its breathing labored. Dr. Hayes looked up at me, her face a mixture of fear, wonder, and scientific curiosity. "Ranger Nakamura, what the hell is going on? What are these beings? They broke into my house, killed those officers, and brought me here." Her voice shook. Then they put pictures in my head, showing me these sick youngsters. Before I could answer, a shadow filled the cave entrance. The matriarch ducked her massive frame through the opening, her eyes moving between Hayes and me. Hayes scrambled backward. "Oh my God, she won't hurt you," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "She's desperate. Their children are dying." The matriarch's mind touched mine, then Hayes's. I felt the connection between us, like a three-way phone call inside. Our heads, you understand now? The matriarch's thoughts flowed to both of us. "This little one will die without your help. 6 others are showing early symptoms." Hayes stared at the matriarch, then at me. "This is impossible. A completely unknown primate species with apparent telepathic abilities, communicating in English?" "Not English," I explained, understanding something I hadn't before. "She's sending concepts, images, feelings. Our brains translate them into words we understand." The young Sasquatch convulsed suddenly, and Hayes's doctor instincts took over. She moved to examine the child, her fear temporarily set aside. "The symptoms look neurological," she muttered, checking the young one's eyes, feeling its pulse. "Similar to heavy metal poisoning in humans. I'd need blood samples, proper equipment." The matriarch made a low rumbling sound, and 3 more Sasquatch entered the cave, carrying Hayes' medical bags and a portable lab kit they must have taken from her home. "They've been watching us for a long time," I said quietly. "They know what we can do, what tools we use." Hayes looked at the equipment, then at the suffering child. I could see her wrestling with herself. Scientific ambition against ethical concerns, fear against compassion. "If I help," she said slowly, "I need to document everything. This is the biological discovery of the century." The matriarch's response hit both our minds with the force of a slap. "No, danger, death." Images flowed from her. Humans with guns, laboratories, cages, dissection tables, Sasquatch bodies being studied, hunted for sport, captured for display, centuries of hiding to avoid exactly this fate. "They've maintained hidden contact with certain humans throughout history," I explained to Hayes, as understanding came to me through the matriarch's memories. People they could trust, but mostly they stay hidden because they know what would happen if the world discovered them. Hayes looked torn. "But the scientific knowledge, the medical advances we could make by studying them, would come at what cost?" I asked quietly. "Their freedom, their lives." The young Sasquatch moaned, bringing us back to the immediate problem. Hayes sighed and opened her medical bag. "I'll help, but we'll need to talk about documentation after." For the next several hours, Hayes worked tirelessly. She took blood samples, tested them with her portable equipment, consulted botanical guides I brought from my pack, and combined her modern medical knowledge with the ancient remedies the Sasquatch showed us. While she worked, the matriarch shared memories with me, images spanning hundreds of years of human history. I saw Sasquatch watching as Native Americans built the first settlements in these forests. I saw them observing European explorers, then loggers, then modern hikers with their GPS devices and smartphones. Most surprisingly, I saw moments when they had quietly intervened in human affairs, guiding lost children back toward trails, moving sleeping campers away from falling trees in storms, even subtly redirecting human development by making certain areas seem unlucky or haunted. We guide when needed, the matriarch explained in my mind. We have watched your kind nearly destroy yourselves many times. Sometimes a small push in the right direction is needed. Like with me, I asked. Did you bring me here specifically? The images I received showed me applying for the transfer to Pinewood Forest, but with a Sasquatch watching over the shoulder of the person approving my application, somehow influencing the decision. We have been watching you since you arrived, she confirmed. Your mind is unusually open to us, like Kevin's, like his grandfather's. I thought of Kevin dying in that hospital bed. Did you kill Kevin? Sadness flooded from her. No, we tried to communicate too much, too fast. His mind was compatible but fragile. Yours is stronger. A shout from Hayes interrupted us. I think I've got something. She had created a mixture of synthetic compounds from her kit and extracts from the plants in my drawings. It should bind to the toxins and help their bodies flush them out, she explained. Similar to how we treat heavy metal poisoning in humans, but modified for their physiology. The matriarch approached the sick youngster and made soft hooting sounds, actual vocal communication rather than telepathy. The child seemed to relax as Hayes administered the first treatment through an IV she'd set up. Now we wait, Hayes said, wiping sweat from her forehead. If this works, we can treat the others. We sat in silence for a while, watching the young. Sasquatch's breathing slowly became more regular, the twitching in its limbs less severe. It's working, Hayes whispered finally, excitement in her voice. It's actually working. The matriarch made a sound like a sigh, relief flowing from her mind to ours. But then Hayes turned to me, her eyes bright with scientific fervor. I need to take samples back, blood, hair, maybe tissue. The world needs to know about this species. The temperature in the cave seemed to drop. The matriarch's mood shifted from gratitude to something darker. If you try to reveal our existence, her thoughts came clear as crystal. You will not leave this forest alive. I stepped between them. There has to be another way, I said, looking from Hayes to the matriarch. A compromise. Outside, the sun was setting. I had been in the valley for almost a full day. And somewhere out there, police would be searching. For Hayes, for the killers of those deputies. Time was running out for all of us. Dawn broke as I reached the edge of a valley I never knew existed, despite months of patrolling these woods. Mist hung between the ancient trees, and the morning light filtered through in golden beams. I stopped, mouth open in wonder. Above me, at least 30 feet up, the forest canopy had been woven into living shelters. Branches bent and twisted together to form platforms, walkways, and dome-shaped homes. It was like an entire village built into the trees themselves. Movement caught my eye, large shapes moving with surprising grace through the upper branches. I counted at least a dozen Sasquatch of different sizes. Some were clearly youngsters, smaller and more playful in their movements. Others were massive adults, watching me with cautious eyes. "Hello?" I called up, feeling stupid the moment the word left my mouth. A familiar pressure touched my mind. The matriarch communicating without words. Follow. Now. Urgency. I moved deeper into the valley, guided by gentle mental nudges. The forest floor showed signs of careful tending. Medicinal plants growing in arranged patterns, stones placed to direct water flow, paths worn by massive feet. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a home, a civilization hidden right alongside ours for thousands of years. The mental nudging led me to a cave entrance partially hidden by hanging vines. Inside, the air was surprisingly warm and smelled of herbs and earth. Light filtered in through cleverly positioned openings in the rock ceiling. "Hello? Is anyone there?" A woman's voice called from deeper inside, frightened but trying to sound brave. "Dr. Hayes?" I called back, moving carefully through the cave. I found her in a side chamber, kneeling beside what at first glance looked like a pile of reddish-brown fur. As I came closer, I realized it was a young Sasquatch, maybe the equivalent of a human 8-year-old. The creature's limbs twitched with uncontrolled spasms, its breathing labored. Dr. Hayes looked up at me, her face a mixture of fear, wonder, and scientific curiosity. "Ranger Nakamura? What the hell is going on? What are these beings?" "They broke into my house, killed those officers, and brought me here." Her voice shook. "Then they put pictures in my head, showing me these sick youngsters." Before I could answer, a shadow filled the cave entrance. The matriarch ducked her massive, framed through the opening, her eyes moving between Hayes and me. Hayes scrambled backward. "Oh my God." "She won't hurt you," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. "She's desperate. Their children are dying." The matriarch's mind touched mine, then Hayes. I felt the connection between us like a three-way phone call inside. Our heads. "You understand now?" The matriarch's thoughts flowed to both of us. "This little one will die without your help. 6 others are showing early symptoms." Hayes stared at the matriarch, then at me. "This is impossible. A completely unknown primate species with apparent telepathic abilities, communicating in English." "Not English," I explained, understanding something I hadn't before. "She's sending concepts, images, feelings. Our brains translate them into words we understand." The young Sasquatch convulsed suddenly, and Hayes's doctor instincts took over. She moved to examine the child, her fear temporarily set aside. "The symptoms look neurological," she muttered, checking the young one's eyes, feeling its pulse. "Similar to heavy metal poisoning in humans. I'd need blood samples, proper equipment." The matriarch made a low rumbling sound, and 3 more Sasquatch entered the cave, carrying Hayes's medical bags and a portable lab kit they must have taken from her home. "They've been watching us for a long time," I said quietly. "They know what we can do, what tools we use." Hayes looked at the equipment, then at the suffering child. I could see her wrestling with herself, scientific ambition against ethical concerns, fear against compassion. "If I help," she said slowly, "I need to document everything. This is the biological discovery of the century." The matriarch's response hit both our minds with the force of a slap. "No danger, death." Images flowed from her. Humans with guns, laboratories, cages, dissection tables, Sasquatch bodies being studied, hunted for sport, captured for display. Centuries of hiding to avoid. Exactly this fate. "They've maintained hidden contact with certain humans throughout history," I explained to Hayes, as understanding came to me through the matriarch's memories. "People they could trust, but mostly they stay hidden because they know what would happen if the world discovered them." Hayes looked torn. "But the scientific knowledge, the medical advances we could make by studying them, would come at what cost?" I asked quietly. "Their freedom, their lives?" The young Sasquatch moaned, bringing us back to the immediate problem. Hayes sighed and opened her medical bag. "I'll help, but we'll need to talk about documentation after." For the next several hours, Hayes worked tirelessly. She took blood samples, tested them with her portable equipment, consulted botanical guides I brought from my pack, and combined her modern medical knowledge with the ancient remedies the Sasquatch showed us. While she worked, the matriarch shared memories with me, images spanning hundreds of years of human history. I saw Sasquatch watching as Native Americans built the first settlements in these forests. I saw them observing European explorers, then loggers, then modern hikers with their GPS devices and smartphones. Most surprisingly, I saw moments when they had quietly intervened in human affairs, guiding lost children back toward trails, moving sleeping campers away from falling trees in storms, even subtly redirecting human development by making certain areas seem unlucky or haunted. We guide when needed, the matriarch explained in my mind. We have watched your kind nearly destroy yourselves many times. Sometimes a small push in the right direction is needed. Like with me, I asked. Did you bring me here specifically? The images I received showed me applying for the transfer to Pinewood Forest, but with a Sasquatch watching over the shoulder of the person approving my application, somehow influencing the decision. We have been watching you since you arrived, she confirmed. Your mind is unusually open to us, like Kevin's, like his grandfather's. I thought of Kevin dying in that hospital bed. Did you kill Kevin? Sadness flooded from her. No, we tried to communicate too much, too fast. His mind was compatible but fragile. Yours is stronger. A shout from Hayes interrupted us. I think I've got something. She had created a mixture of synthetic compounds from her kit and extracts from the plants in my drawings. It should bind to the toxins and help their bodies flush them out, she explained. Similar to how we treat heavy metal poisoning in humans, but modified for their physiology. The matriarch approached the sick youngster and made soft hooting sounds. Actual vocal communication rather than telepathy. The child seemed to relax as Hayes administered the first treatment through an IV she'd set up. Now we wait, Hayes said, wiping sweat from her forehead. If this works, we can treat the others. We sat in silence for a while, watching the young. Sasquatch's breathing slowly become more regular, the twitching in its limbs less severe. It's working, Hayes whispered finally, excitement in her voice. It's actually working. The matriarch made a sound like a sigh, relief flowing from her mind to ours. But then Hayes turned to me, her eyes bright with scientific fervor. I need to take samples back. Blood, hair, maybe tissue. The world needs to know about this species. The temperature in the cave seemed to drop. The matriarch's mood shifted from gratitude to something darker. If you try to reveal our existence, her thoughts came clear as crystal. You will not leave this forest alive. I stepped between them. There has to be another way, I said, looking from Hayes to the matriarch. A compromise. Outside, the sun was setting. I had been in the valley for almost a full day, and somewhere out there, police would be searching. For Hayes, for the killers of those deputies, time was running out for all of us. The alligator was inside out, not torn apart like normal predator kills. Inside, out, like someone had unzipped its skin with surgical precision, emptied everything inside, and arranged all its organs in a perfect circle beside the body. No blood anywhere, not a single drop on the mud bank. That's when I knew something was hunting in my swamp, something that wasn't supposed to exist. My name is Darius Jackson. I'm a park ranger at Everglades National Park in Florida. Been working these waters for 5 years now, ever since I quit my marine biology career after a lab accident left me with this jagged scar running from my left eye to my jaw. Most days, I love my job, guiding airboats through cypress knees and sawgrass, helping lost tourists and checking water quality at our remote stations. But that summer of 1993 changed everything. It started on a regular evening patrol. The air was thick with humidity, like trying to breathe through a wet towel. My airboat sliced through the dark water as the sunset painted everything in deep orange and red. The cypress trees cast long shadows across the water, looking like fingers, reaching out to grab anything passing by. I was heading back to headquarters when I saw something strange. Miles away, a huge flock of white egrets suddenly burst from the tree canopy. Birds don't usually fly like that unless something scares them. and they were moving against the wind, which made no sense at all. Animals don't panic for no reason. Turned my airboat toward where the birds had come from. The engine noise scared away most wildlife, so the swamp around me went quiet, except for insects buzzing. As I rounded a bend into a small lagoon, I saw the mud bank and the alligator. This wasn't just any alligator. This was Old Mike, a 15-footer we'd tagged years ago. The biggest one in this part of the Everglades. Nothing hunted Old Mike. He was the one who did the hunting until now. I cut the engine and drifted closer. The smell hit me first. Not the normal rotting swamp smell I was used to, but something sharper, like chemicals and decay mixed together. I pulled my boat onto the bank and approached carefully. Old Mike's body had been opened from jaw to tail. His skin was peeled back perfectly, like someone had followed an instruction manual. Next to him, his organs were arranged in a pattern. Heart, lungs, stomach, intestines, all completely dry. No blood anywhere, not on the mud, not on the organs, nowhere. In 15 years studying wildlife, I'd never seen anything like this. No animal kills this way, not in the Everglades, not anywhere on Earth. I took photos with my camera, collected samples, and marked the GPS location. My hands shook the whole time. Not from fear, not yet anyway, but from that feeling when your brain can't make sense of what your eyes are seeing. Back at Ranger headquarters, I showed the photos to my supervisor, Patricia Donnelly. "Poachers," she said, barely looking at them. "Exotic animal collectors. They're getting creative these days." "Pat, no poacher does this," I argued. "They take the skin, the teeth, maybe the meat. They don't perform surgery and arrange organs in patterns." She sighed and finally looked at me. "What's your explanation then?" I didn't have one. "Not yet. Just file the report," she said. "We'll increase patrols in that section." The next morning, I visited Manuel Osceola, a Miccosukee guide who knew the Everglades better than anyone. I'd worked with him before when tracking invasive pythons. His wooden house sat on stilts at the edge of the reservation. When I showed him the location on my map where I'd found Old Mike, his face changed. "I don't go there," he said simply. "Why not? You've taken me everywhere else." Manuel looked away toward the swamp. "That place is where Hatkachubi lives." "What's that?" "The smelly one who moves like smoke," he translated. "My grandfather saw it once. It looks like a man sometimes, like mist other times. It leaves animals opened up, like your alligator." I didn't believe in monsters, but I believed in Manuel. He wasn't a man who got scared easily. That afternoon, I set up motion sensor cameras around the site where I'd found Old Mike. If poachers were operating in my park, I'd catch them. 3 days later, I returned to check the cameras. 2 were broken. Their casings cracked like something had crushed them. The third one still worked. I took out the memory card and reviewed the footage on my portable viewer. Most of the video showed nothing, just night footage of the empty mud bank. But at 3:17 a.m., something strange happened. A reddish mist appeared in the frame, moving against the wind. The temperature display on the camera dropped from 78 degrees to 48 degrees in seconds. Then the screen filled with static before going black. That same day, I found another alligator. Same condition as Old Mike, cut open, organs arranged, no blood. 2 days later, a third one, then a fourth. When I plotted the locations on my map, they formed a perfect pentagon. Whatever was, hunting in my swamp wasn't random. It had a plan. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those perfectly arranged organs and that weird red mist moving against the wind. I kept telling myself there had to be a normal explanation, but deep down, I knew better. The deer next morning started with bad news. A family of 4 hadn't returned from their guided tour of the swamp. The Millers, Mom, Dad, and 2 teenage kids, had rented an airboat yesterday afternoon for a 3-hour trip. Their hotel called. When they didn't come back for the night, I joined the search team at dawn. The morning fog hung low over the water as our boats spread out across the eastern section of the park. The mosquitoes were biting something fierce, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, connecting dots I didn't want to connect. We found their airboat around noon. It was drifting in a small channel, engines still running, but nearly out of gas. Their backpacks, camera, water bottles, everything was still there. No signs of an accident, no blood, no struggle. The family had simply vanished. I picked up their digital camera and turned it on. The screen showed a series of normal vacation photos, the kids smiling by the water, Mom pointing at a heron, Dad making a funny face. Then the photos changed. Blurry shots of what looked like red mist. The last picture made my skin go cold. What appeared to be a massive hairy arm reaching out from the vapor. "Found anything?" asked Rivera, another ranger who'd pulled his boat alongside mine. I quickly turned off the camera and pocketed it. Just their stuff. No sign of them. I didn't show him the pictures. He'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was. After we returned to headquarters, I copied the camera's memory card before turning in the camera as evidence. The search for the Millers continued, but as the hours ticked by, that sick feeling in my stomach got worse. That night, I sat in my small cabin at the edge of the ranger compound, spreading out my map of the Everglades on the kitchen table. The pentagon formed by the alligator kills seemed to center around one area, a remote section of the swamp that didn't get many visitors. Even our patrol routes rarely took us there. I decided to check it out myself the next day. Patricia would be mad if she found out I was investigating alone, but I didn't care. 4 people were missing. Something was wrong in my park and I needed answers. The morning came with heavy rain, the kind that falls in sheets and turns the world gray. Perfect for keeping tourists away, not so perfect for navigating the maze of waterways. I packed extra. Supplies, my GPS, and a better camera. As an afterthought, I grabbed my old service pistol too. The rain had stopped by the time I reached the area at the center of the Pentagon. The air felt different here, heavier somehow, with a faint smell like rotten eggs mixed with dead plants. I cut the airboat engine and let silence settle around me. That's when I noticed the cold spots. Moving slowly through the channels, I found places where the temperature would suddenly drop by 20 or 30 degrees. Each cold spot came with that same putrid smell, stronger now. I marked each location on my GPS. In one of these cold areas, I reached into the water to collect a sample in a glass container. The water looked normal, but felt wrong, almost like it was vibrating against my skin. Back in the boat, I held up the container to examine it. The water inside seemed to move on its own, swirling without me shaking it. When sunlight hit the container, the water began to bubble and evaporate rapidly, leaving behind a reddish residue that ate through the glass. I dropped the dissolving container overboard in surprise. "What the hell?" I whispered to myself. I spent hours taking readings and photos. The more I explored, the more convinced I became that something truly unusual was happening here. As the sun began to set, I reluctantly headed back. I needed to research what I'd found. That night, sleep came with nightmares. I dreamed I was wading through swamp water that slowly turned to red mist. The mist began wrapping around my legs, getting thicker, forming into hands that grabbed at me. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. The next day, I drove to the University of Miami Library. I needed to look through historical records about the Everglades. Something, anything that might explain what I was dealing with. The librarian helped me find accounts from early explorers, including Spanish documents from the 1500s. What I found sent a chill down my spine. The Spanish wrote of a demonio del vapor pestilente, a demon of foul vapor that haunted certain areas of the Great Swamp. They described how members of their expeditions would vanish, leaving behind perfectly preserved weapons and clothes. One priest wrote about finding the body of a soldier, opened as if by a surgeon's hand, organs removed with impossible skill. Just like my alligators, I was still at the library when my radio crackled. It was Patricia. "Jackson, where are you? We've got 3 bodies at the South Creek. You need to see this." I broke every speed limit getting back to the park. Patricia met me at the dock, her face grim. "Poachers," she said. "At least that's what they look like from their gear, found in a hidden camp near the restricted area. The bodies had been moved to our small medical facility. I steeled myself before walking in, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. 3 men lay on separate tables. They looked like mummies. Skin pulled tight against their bones, completely dried out. Their faces were frozen in expressions of absolute terror, mouths open in silent screams. The medical examiner looked up as I entered. "Never seen anything like it," she said. "It's like every drop of moisture was sucked out of them. No animal could do this." I thought of the red mist, the cold spots, the water that evaporated in sunlight. "I need to talk to you," I said to Patricia, pulling her outside. "I don't think we're dealing with poachers or animals." For the first time, she actually listened as I explained everything I'd found. The perfect pentagon of alligator kills, the cold spots, the Spanish accounts, the strange water samples. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Finally, she nodded slowly. "We need better equipment," she said. "If there's something toxic in that water, something chemical that could do this to people." She still thought this was something normal, something science could explain. Part of me wanted to believe that too. "I'll go with you tomorrow," she added. "We'll set up atmospheric monitoring equipment. If there's something in the air or water there, we'll find it." I didn't tell her about the arm I'd seen in the miller's photos, or about my dreams of mist that formed into grasping hands. Some things were too crazy to say out loud. But as I drove back to my cabin that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already too late. Whatever was out there in the swamp, it was getting stronger, bolder, and I was pretty sure it knew I was looking for it. Patricia and I loaded up the airboat at dawn. The sky was clear, promising another scorching Florida day. We packed specialized equipment, air quality monitors, water testing kits, thermal cameras, and enough supplies to camp overnight. I noticed Patricia had brought her service pistol too. Maybe she was taking this more seriously than I thought. "So, where exactly are we going?" she asked as we pushed off from the dock. "The center of the Pentagon," I said, starting the engine. "There's a small island there that isn't on most maps. The journey took nearly 3 hours, winding through narrow channels where cypress trees made tunnels overhead." Neither of us talked much. I kept scanning the water, looking for anything unusual. Patricia checked her equipment repeatedly. When we finally reached the small island, the air felt heavy with more than just humidity. That strange smell was stronger here, like rotten eggs and decaying plants mixed with something metallic. "You smell that?" I asked as we tied up the boat. Patricia nodded, frowning. "Could be methane from decomposition, or maybe someone dumped chemicals out here." We set up our equipment in a small clearing. Patricia took air samples while I searched the perimeter of the island. That's when I found them, partially buried in the mud at the water's edge, bits of pottery and carved stone sticking out from the earth. "Pat, come look at this," I called. Together we carefully brushed away layers of mud, revealing ancient artifacts arranged in a perfect circle. There were masks carved from wood, now preserved in the wet earth with strange elongated features that didn't look quite human, and vessels, clay pots with intricate designs, some with tight-fitting lids that seemed designed to trap something inside. "These are Calusa artifacts," Patricia whispered, her skepticism finally cracking. "They shouldn't be out here, and they definitely shouldn't be arranged like this." "Look how they're positioned," I said. "This isn't random. Someone or something uncovered these recently and placed them in this pattern." We spent the rest of the day setting up monitoring equipment around the island and taking samples. With each passing hour, The temperature seemed to drop slightly, despite the hot sun overhead. By evening, when we set up our small tent, it felt at least 10 degrees cooler than it should have. The readings are weird, Patricia said, looking at her monitors. Oxygen levels fluctuate every few minutes, and there's some kind of gas my equipment can't identify. We ate a quick dinner as darkness settled over the swamp. The night sounds started up. Frogs, insects, the occasional splash of something moving in the water. Normal swamp sounds that somehow made the whole situation feel even more wrong. What do you think those Calusa vessels were for? I asked, partly to break the tension. Patricia shrugged. Storage? Ceremonial use? Hard to say without proper archaeological... She stopped mid-sentence. In the distance, the frogs had gone suddenly silent. You hear that? I whispered. I don't hear anything, she replied. That's the problem. The silence spread like a wave. Insects stopping their chirping, birds going quiet. Even the air seemed to still. Then came the temperature drop. In seconds, it plummeted from warm to freezing. Our breath clouded in front of our faces. The monitors, Patricia said, scrambling toward her equipment. The digital displays were going crazy, temperature falling, unknown gas levels rising. Then the smell hit us. That same putrid odor, but 100 times stronger. I gagged, covering my mouth with my shirt. There, I pointed toward the water's edge. A thick red mist was rolling in across the water, moving against the slight breeze. It didn't behave like normal fog. It seemed to pulse and swirl with purpose, reaching out tendrils that probed the shoreline. Get the cameras, I whispered. Patricia grabbed the thermal camera while I turned on our spotlight. The beam cut through the darkness, but seemed to get swallowed by the red mist, barely penetrating a few feet. Through the camera's night vision, I watched as the mist thickened and rose higher, nearly 6 feet tall now. And then I saw it. Within the mist, a shape began to form. First an arm, massive and covered in reddish-brown hair, then another, a hulking torso. Finally, a head that was both ape-like and not, too large, with features that shifted and flowed like they couldn't decide what to be. Oh my God, Patricia breathed beside me. The creature dropped to all fours, still nearly 7 feet tall, even hunched over. It moved toward us with an unnatural grace, parts of its body dissolving into mist when it passed between trees, then reforming on the other side. Patricia raised her camera, the flash illuminating the creature for a split second. It stopped, turning its head toward us. I couldn't make out its face clearly. It kept shifting between solid and vapor, but I could feel it looking right at us. Then it made a sound. Not an animal growl or roar, but something worse. It was like multiple voices speaking at once, some deep and rumbling, others high-pitched and almost human, creating a pattern that made my teeth hurt and my head spin. Run, I said, grabbing Patricia's arm. We backed away slowly at first, then turned to sprint toward our tent and equipment. I heard a whooshing sound behind us, like a strong wind. Looking back, I saw the creature had dissolved almost completely into mist again and was moving toward us much faster than before. Patricia tripped on a root, falling hard. Before I could reach her, tendrils of the red mist wrapped around her. Legs. She screamed, a sound of pure agony that I'll never forget. I grabbed her arms and pulled with all my strength, dragging her away from the advancing mist. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see her skin blistering where the mist had touched her, turning red and raw. I half carried, half dragged her through. The trees, away from our camp. The mist followed, flowing around obstacles, always moving toward us. It wasn't behaving like any natural phenomenon, it was hunting us. Through the darkness, I spotted an old structure, a small hunting cabin I remembered from park maps. With Patricia growing heavier in my arms, I pushed toward it with the last of my strength. We burst through the door and I kicked it shut behind us. The cabin was abandoned, dusty and cobwebbed, but solid. Through cracks in the wooden walls, I could see the red mist surrounding the cabin, probing for a way in. But it didn't come through. I laid Patricia down on the dusty floor and checked her legs. The skin where the mist had touched her was badly blistered, with a strange, translucent quality. I could almost see through to the veins and muscles underneath. "My kit," she gasped, pointing to her bag. "First aid." I dressed her wounds as best I could, but this wasn't like any injury I'd seen before. Her skin continued to change, becoming clearer like frosted glass, and underneath her veins seemed to be emptying, collapsing in on themselves. "The walls," she said weakly, pointing. "Why isn't it coming in?" I examined the cabin walls more closely, running my fingers along the old wood. The logs were cypress, common enough, but they'd been treated with something that gave off a faint, pleasant smell underneath the dust and age. It reminded me of the medicinal herbs Manuel's grandmother used to make into tea. "Something in the wood keeps it out," I said. "Some kind of treatment." I tried the radio but got only static interrupted by those same inhuman sounds we'd heard outside, clicks and hisses that almost formed words. No help was coming. All night we watched the red mist circle the cabin. Sometimes it would condense partially, showing glimpses of that massive, hairy form. Other times it spread thin, searching every crack and crevice of our shelter. By morning, the mist had retreated. With the dawn, Patricia's condition had worsened. The translucent quality had spread up to her knees, and she couldn't feel her feet anymore. "You need medical help," I said, helping her up. "We both know this isn't something doctors can fix," she replied, her voice surprisingly calm. We made our way back to the airboat. The equipment at our campsite was destroyed, melted and corroded as if exposed to strong acid. The ancient artifacts were gone. I got Patricia into the boat and started the engine. As we pulled away from the island, I looked back one last time. For a second, I thought I saw the red mist lingering at the water's edge, watching us leave. Patricia gripped my arm suddenly, her eyes wide. "It's in my dreams," she whispered. "It's been there for weeks. Every night. Calling me. How did I not remember until now?" I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "What do you mean?" "It marks you first," she said, "in your mind, before it ever touches your body." I thought of my own dreams, wading through mist that formed into hens. Had I been marked too? We were halfway back to headquarters when Patricia started to change. It began with her fingers. They grew more transparent, like ice just starting to form. Then her hands began to give off wisps of red vapor. "Darius," she said, her voice shaking, "it's happening." I pushed the airboat to full speed, the engine screaming as we raced through the channels. Patricia leaned against the side, her breathing shallow. The transparent effect had reached her elbows now. "Talk to me," I said, trying to keep her conscious. "When did the dream start?" "After we found the first alligator," she admitted. "I didn't tell you because they seemed so stupid, just nightmares about red fog. But each night they got clearer. The fog would talk to me, using different voices all at once. That matched what we'd heard from the creature." "What did it say?" "It said it was lonely, that it needed companions." She looked down at her arms. "I think I'm becoming part of it, Darius." The dark came into view, and I shouted for help as we approached. 2 rangers ran over. Their faces went pale when they saw Patricia. "Get the medical kit!" I yelled, but even as they ran to help, I knew no medical kit would fix this. By the time we got Patricia to the infirmary, the transformation had spread to her chest. The doctor took one look at her and stepped back in shock. "What the hell is this?" he asked. "Some kind of toxic exposure," I lied. "We need to contain it." Patricia grabbed my hand with her remaining solid arm. Her skin felt ice cold. "The cypress wood," she whispered. "Remember the cabin." Then her eyes rolled back and her whole body began to emit the red mist. The doctor and nurses backed away in horror as Patricia's form started to dissolve before our eyes. "Everyone out!" I shouted, pushing them toward the door. "Seal the room!" Her body was breaking down into the same red mist we'd seen in the swamp. But just before the last of her dissolved, I heard her voice. Not from what remained of her mouth, but somehow from inside the mist itself. "Darius," it called, sounding both like Patricia and not like her at all. "It's still me, but there are others here too. So many others. It's coming for you next." Then the mist pressed against the windows and vents, searching for a way out. I sealed the door and ordered the building evacuated. Within an hour, the entire ranger station was quarantined. I told them it was an unknown pathogen, possibly from illegal chemical dumping. They believed me because the truth was too impossible. A hazmat team arrived by nightfall, but by then, the red mist had vanished, escaped through some crack or vent we'd missed, or perhaps simply dissolved into nothing. Patricia was gone, and I was the only one who knew what had really taken her. That night I drove to the Miccosukee Reservation to find Manuel. His grandmother, an elder named Sarah, welcomed me into their home. When I described what had happened to Patricia, Manuel translated for his grandmother. The old woman's face grew grave. "She says this thing has been in the swamp since before her people came," Manuel explained. "The old tribes called it different names, but all feared it. It was once a man, a powerful shaman who tried to capture the spirits of the dead. But the spirits turned on him, trapped him between life and death." "How do I kill it?" I asked. Manuel asked his grandmother in their language. She spoke for a long time, her hands moving to emphasize certain points. "You don't kill it," Manuel finally translated. "It's not fully alive, but she says it can be trapped. The old tribes knew how to make barriers it couldn't cross. Cypress, wood treated with sacred herbs, like the cabin that had protected us." Sarah disappeared into another room and returned with a small leather pouch. Inside was a mixture of dried herbs that gave off a sweet, sharp smell. "Burn this," Manuel said. "It creates a barrier the entity cannot cross. It's what saved you in that cabin." I took the pouch gratefully. "Ask her how to find where it lives." After more conversation, Manuel turned back to me. "Grandmother says it hides in the deep places of the swamp, places where the land falls away into water-filled caves. She says..." He hesitated. "She says, you've already been marked by it. It's in your dreams." I nodded slowly. "Every night. Then it will find you no matter where you go," Manuel said, his voice grim. "Grandmother says your only chance is to face it in its lair, where it's strongest, but also most vulnerable." Back at my cabin, I pored over maps of the Everglades, looking for sinkholes and underwater cave systems near the center of our Pentagon. There was a large limestone formation there that might contain caves. I also researched everything I could find about similar phenomena. Most was useless. Ghost stories and campfire tales. But in the university archives, I found old photographs from Everglades expeditions dating back to the early 1900s. In several of them, taken decades apart, I could make out what looked like red mist in the background, always in the same region of the swamp. Whatever this thing was, it had been there for a very long time. The dreams got worse each night. The mist would form into a shape almost like a man, but too tall, too strange. It would speak using voices I recognized. Patricia's voice, the missing Miller family, even voices that sounded centuries old, speaking languages I didn't understand. "Join us," the voices would say. "We are lonely." I woke each morning more exhausted than when I'd gone to sleep, and once I caught a glimpse of my ankle in the shower, the skin there momentarily clear as glass, showing veins underneath. It lasted only seconds before returning to normal, but I knew what it meant. I was running out of time. A week after Patricia's transformation, I prepared to return to the swamp. I told no one where I was going. They'd only try to stop me. I packed the herbal mixture from Sarah, extra fuel for the airboat, my service pistol, and something else, explosives from our supply shed, normally used for clearing fallen trees. This time, I was going hunting. The Pentagon of alligator kills led me back to the same area, but this time I searched specifically for sinkholes. The swamp tried to hide its secrets under murky water and hanging moss, but after hours of searching, I found what I was looking for. A perfectly circular pool of dark water, much deeper than the surrounding marsh. I anchored my boat nearby and prepared my gear. The herb mixture went into a small metal container I could carry. The explosives went into my waterproof backpack. I checked my underwater flashlight and took a deep breath. The sun was setting as I slipped into the water. It was warm on the surface, but grew colder as I dove toward the dark circle below. My flashlight beam seemed to get swallowed by the darkness, barely showing me a few feet ahead. About 15 feet down, the sinkhole opened into a wider space. I swam forward, following a natural tunnel in the limestone. The cold intensified, and that familiar smell penetrated even through the water. Rot and chemicals and something else I couldn't name. I knew I was getting close. After what seemed like forever, I broke the surface in a large air-filled cavern. My flashlight revealed limestone walls, rising to a ceiling about 20 feet high. There was a stone ledge nearby, and I pulled myself out of the water, gasping for breath. The air here was stale and cold, with that same putrid smell, stronger than ever. My light showed a tunnel leading deeper into the cave system. Taking a moment to prepare myself, I lit some of the herb mixture. The smoke curled upward, creating a sweet scent that partly masked the rotting smell. Then I followed the tunnel deeper, into the earth. What I found there will haunt me until the day I die. The passage opened into a vast chamber filled with specimens. That's the only word I can use for what I saw. Hundreds of perfectly preserved bodies, human and animal, arranged throughout the cave as if frozen in the middle of normal activities. There were animals posed as if drinking from pools or hunting prey. Birds suspended from the ceiling as if in flight, and people, so many people, spanning what looked like centuries based on their clothing and appearance. Spanish conquistadors stood in full armor, their skin dried to leather but their poses lifelike. Native Americans from various tribes sat as if in council. Settlers, explorers, tourists, all perfectly preserved and arranged like some twisted museum display. And among them, I recognized faces. The Miller family stood together, holding hands, their skin translucent like clouded glass, their insides hollow. And Patricia, or what had been Patricia, standing with her ranger notebook open, posed as if taking notes. None of them were alive, but they weren't exactly dead either. Through their transparent skin, I could see red mist swirling inside them, filling the space where organs should have been. I backed away in horror, nearly dropping my light. That's when I felt the temperature plummet. Behind me, the red mist began to gather, swirling into that massive shape I'd seen before. But here, in its lair, it formed more completely. I could see it clearly for the first time. It stood over 7 feet tall, its body covered in reddish-brown hair, but its skin had the same translucent quality as Patricia's had developed, like living glass. Through it, I could see not blood vessels or organs, but swirling red mist contained within a human-like form. Its face was the worst part, almost human, but wrong in ways I couldn't fully process. Too large, features that shifted slightly as I watched, never quite settling into a single expression, and its eyes, they glowed from within, lit by the same red mist that made up its being. The creature regarded me silently for a long moment. Then it spoke, that same impossible voice made of dozens of others layered together. "You came to me," it said. "The others had to be taken, but you came willingly." I gripped my flashlight so hard my knuckles turned white. The creature stood between me and the way out. The herb mixture I'd burned was keeping it at a distance, but the smoke was thinning. I wouldn't have long. "What are you?" I managed to ask, my voice echoing in the cave. The creature's shape rippled, parts of it dissolving into mist before reforming. "I was like you once," it said with that terrible multi-voice. "Human, alive, alone." It moved closer, stopping at the edge of the herb smoke. "I found the gas pocket in these caves long ago. It changed me. Now I am many." "The people you've taken," I said, gesturing to the preserved bodies around us. "Are they still aware?" "Parts of them," it answered. "Their memories, their voices, their essence. They join the collective. They are never alone again." A chill ran through me as I realized what it meant. It wasn't just killing people. It was absorbing them somehow, keeping pieces of their consciousness within itself. "Patricia?" I asked, looking at her preserved form. The creature's eyes flashed, and when it spoke next, it was with Patricia's, a voice alone. "I'm here, Darius. It's not what you think. It's peaceful. We're together." Then the multi-voice returned. "You're already changing. I marked you in your dreams. Soon you'll join us too." I thought of the momentary transparency I'd seen in my skin, the dreams that grew more vivid each night. It was happening to me, just as it had happened to Patricia. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep it talking while I considered my options. "Why do you need to take people?" The creature moved around the edge of my protective smoke, studying me from different angles. "I cannot maintain this form without new essence. Without it, I dissolve permanently into vapor, become nothing. I will not return to nothingness." As it spoke, I glanced around the cave, taking in details I'd missed before. At the far end, a narrow fissure in the rock leaked a yellowish gas, barely visible in my flashlight beam. That must be the gas pocket it mentioned, the source of its transformation. An idea began to form in my mind. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked, slowly shifting my position to get a better view of the gas leak. "Centuries," it replied. "Since the first tribes found these waters, I have watched your kind change, adapt, evolve. I have evolved too." That explained how it had learned to be more effective over time. It was absorbing knowledge from each victim, getting smarter with each person it took. "And what happens if I refuse to join you?" I asked. The creature's form solidified more fully, muscles tensing beneath its transparent skin. "None refuse. All become part of the collective, willingly or not." I needed to keep it talking. "And if I joined willingly, what then?" It paused, seeming surprised by the question. "Those who join willingly retain more of themselves. Their voices remain distinct within the collective. Their memories stay clearer. So I could remain me in some way?" The creature moved closer, the herb smoke now barely keeping it at bay. "Yes, you would be the strongest addition in generation. Your knowledge of this swamp, your scientific mind, you would have a special place among us." I pretended to consider this, slowly adjusting my backpack. Inside were the explosives already wired together. All I needed was to get them near that gas leak and set the timer. "And what would I have to do?" I asked. The creature extended one massive, semi-transparent hand. "Simply accept. Come to me willingly. The transition will be painless." I took a small step forward as if considering its offer. The creature's eyes flashed with what looked like triumph. "Before I decide," I said, "I want to understand better. These gas pockets, they're what changed you?" The creature nodded its massive head. "The earth here holds ancient gases. They transform my cells, allowing me to shift between solid and vapor. The same will happen to you. It has already begun." I was close enough now to see the gas leak clearly. A steady stream of yellowish vapor was emerging from a crack about 3 feet wide in the cave wall. If my plan worked, the explosives would collapse that section, cutting off the creature's source of power and possibly igniting the gas itself. I need time to think, I told it, taking another small step toward the gas leak. The creature's form rippled with what might have been impatience. Your time runs short. Already your cells change. Accept now while you still have choice. I was out of herb smoke, out of distance, out of time. The creature began to advance, parts of it dissolving into that red mist that reached toward me. In tendrils. Wait, I said, raising my hands. I've decided I'll join you. The creature paused, its form solidifying again. You choose wisely. But on one condition, I added quickly. Show me how it works. Show me the gas that changed you. It seemed to consider this for a moment, then nodded. Come, see your future. Led me toward the fissure in the rock face. The yellowish gas had an odd, sweet smell underneath the creature's putrid odor. As we approached, I felt a tingling sensation on my skin. This is the source, the creature said, gesturing to the gas leak, the Earth's gift to me, and now to you. It was now or never. In one quick motion, I shrugged off my backpack and swung it toward the fissure. What? The creature began, but I was already diving behind a large rock formation. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The cave shook violently, rocks falling from the ceiling as the charges went off. A secondary explosion followed, the gas igniting in a blinding flash that lit up the entire cavern. I pressed myself against the floor, covering my head as debris rained down. When I finally looked up, dust filled the air, making it hard to see. But even through the dust cloud, I could make out a massive pile of rubble where the gas fissure had been. The gas leak was sealed. A howl unlike anything I'd ever heard echoed through the cave. Part animal roar, part human scream, multiplied by what sounded like hundreds of voices, all crying out at once. Through the settling dust, I saw the creature, writhing near the center of the cave. Its form was unstable, parts of it dissolving into red mist that couldn't seem to hold together. Other sections remained solid, but were changing, becoming more transparent, more fragile. What have you done? It shrieked with its many voices. Patricia's voice was among them, along with others I recognized and many I didn't. Cut off your supply, I said, backing toward the water passage. No more gas, no more transformations, no more victims. The creature lurched toward me, but it was clearly weakened. Large portions of its body kept dissolving into mist that dispersed. Instead of reforming, it reached out one increasingly transparent hand. You don't understand, it said, its voices becoming more distinct, separating from each other as its form failed. We'll be trapped, conscious but formless, forever. I felt a pang of something like pity, not for the creature itself, but for the people it had absorbed. Were they truly conscious in there? Would they suffer without their physical anchor? But I thought of the Miller family, of Patricia, of countless others taken over centuries. It ends now, I said firmly. The creature made one last lunge toward me, but more of it dissolved with each movement. I turned and dove into the water passage, swimming with all my strength. Behind me, I could hear those terrible voices echoing. Through the water, screaming, pleading, cursing. The underwater tunnel seemed longer on the return journey. My lungs burned for air, my muscles ached, and the cold seemed to penetrate to my bones. Just when I thought I couldn't hold my breath any longer, I broke the surface of the sinkhole, gasping. The night sky above was filled with stars. Normal, beautiful stars. I pulled myself into my airboat and collapsed, breathing hard. No sign of red mist followed me from the water. No strange cold spots surrounded me. It was over, or so I thought. I made it back to headquarters just as dawn broke. The station was in chaos. Patricia's disappearance had raised all kinds of questions, and the hazmat team was still searching for traces of the pathogen I'd invented. I should have told them the truth. Maybe I would have, if I hadn't noticed the small patch of transparent skin on my wrist that morning, clear as glass for a few seconds before returning to normal. Whatever the creature had done to me hadn't fully reversed part of its influence. remained. I gave my statement, a sanitized version involving toxic gases from underwater caves and hallucinations that explained Patricia's strange symptoms. They didn't entirely believe me, but they couldn't disprove it either. Without a body, Patricia was classified as missing, presumed dead from exposure to unknown toxins. The case was eventually closed. The missing Miller family was never found. The strange alligator death stopped. Life in the Everglades slowly returned to normal, but I knew better.